everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth in Story, and I'm here to take a look at the new Mythic Tarot. Now you all say it's all Kelly's fault. Hashtag Kelly made me do it, right? This is all Stephen's fault. Actually, this is all a lot of people's fault, but definitely recently Stephen's fault from Tiff Tarot. So I've heard the Mythic Tarot so many, now look, as soon as I start to videotape, Isabel decides to shred something. Now, I have heard a lot of people love the original Mythic Tarot, which is really difficult to find the original and or very expensive to find the original. The new one that has been put out doesn't have as good of reviews in terms of the artwork as the first one. So, but what I've heard is that the system is really wonderful. And so I thought, okay, it was Black Friday today here in the United States. Lots of deals. I had a really good coupon and this was there. And I thought, you know what? I am going to give this a go and take a look at it and see what I think about it. So I'm going to try to keep in mind that taking a look at this as a system a little bit more so than straight up the artwork. I have seen, and I will link below, Stephen did a walkthrough kind of comparing the original cards to the new cards, so I will put a link to that below. I do really like the original artwork. However, you know, sometimes you simply have to accept that that's not, you know, that's just not something that's easily defined. And so I still want to take a look at it. I love the Mythic Oracle, which deals with mythology as well. I'm just a mythology freak. So that I haven't gotten this already is quite shocking. I really loved working with these cards, which I think will work beautifully with the Mythic Tarot. And so I thought, you know what? It's a nice treat for the day. So that's what I'm going to do, is take a peek at this with you guys, as always. I don't know what this costs. The cost here is $25.99. I had a great coupon, so I think I ended up getting it for about $15. I'm guessing Amazon is, you know, probably around the same. I'm guessing maybe 15 to 18. I don't know. I'll try to take a peek and see. So it's not horribly expensive right now. You know, you can get it if you wait for deals or go on Amazon. You can get it for fairly cheap. So I was like, okay, you know, for that price, I'll take a look at this. So this, the publisher, I guess I should look here. This is by Juliet Sharman Burke and Liz Green, with the illustrations by Giovanni Caselli. This is a St. Martin's Press deck. Yeah, I don't know anything about St. Martin's Press. I just know that the book is supposed to be really good. It's a nice, thick book. And that's one of the things that I really have, from my understanding, is that the system as well, and this is not a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, so if that's what you're looking for, this would not be what you would be looking for. I know that a lot of the majors have been, I don't think changed the names on them. I think some of the order has changed. And I know that the suits follow certain myths kind of chronologically. So I'm really excited about that. And I've just heard that it's a great book. And if you like mythology, as I do, this might be one that interests you. So here we have the backing, which is purple. We can see that same purple reflected in the box. The box itself is it's not sturdy at all, but at least it's a box. So it's similar in feel to like an old Llewellyn box, but on the other hand, it feels more functionable because the thing fits in there and the deck fits in there. So it's not terrible, but it's nothing to write home about, if that makes sense. So we'll put that aside. We will definitely be taking a look at this. Let's just take a quick peek very carefully. I know, I'm sure, I think I've read, well, the cardstock feels like the new Llewellyn cardstock. It's a little bit cardboard feeling, but it's not, I think that the first edition people talk about how it's really, really thin. This is not horribly thin. I think it's going to rifle shuffle well, but it doesn't have a great feel. It's mediocre. It's not an expensive deck to get, and you can tell the difference between a really good deck and one that is a little bit thin cardstock. But we'll see when we actually take it to the shuffle test when this is done. So here we have the backings again. Just definitely don't like that. Copyright, it has Trisha Newell and Giovanni. So there's two people credit. Here we just have illustrated by Giovanni Caselli, but we have a copyright to Trisha Sewell and Giovanni Caselli 2008. Just don't like these whatsoever, and those are intrusive. You know, I understand copyright. I understand why an artist might want copyright, but I think that having them on the decks are just intrusive, and I think not necessary, because there are so many that don't have them like that, that it doesn't seem to me, in my opinion, to be necessary to have. Other than that, I like just the very simple with the 4 suits around it, you know, minus that away. I don't believe trimming wouldn't, let's see. Trimming might remove those, but I had no really intentions of trimming these, so we'll see. I'll have to Google it and see if anybody's done so. So we'll come back to the cards and walking through the cards after we take a look at the guidebook, which from what I understand is quite lovely. Let me see if we can get a little bit zoomed in more. Here we go. So here we have the new Mythic Tarot. As we said, it is a nice thick guidebook. And again, I don't know who this other person who is also, I think maybe she's the original illustrator, because they did the original, these illustrations, as you'll see if you go and look at Stephen's walkthrough, they definitely took the composition from the original ones. They've just done different, you know, different, it's a different painter, but the actual images are quite similar, and so I'm guessing maybe they gave credit to that person, which would, I guess, be good, but do that right here on the cover, not on the back of the cards. But that's just me. Y'all know how I feel about that. So we talk about the origins of tarot cards in general. So there's a nice section here, and then we talk about then they go into talking about the Mythic Tarot. They say that they've attempted to restore some of the original simplicity and accessibility of tarot cards by redesigning the deck in accordance with the images of the Greek gods so beloved by Renaissance artists and writers, and which form one of the primary underpinnings of the Western culture. The Greek gods are not the exclusive property of any particular esoteric school, religious doctrine, or spiritual path. Amoral yet containing profound moral truths, they predate and permeate our modern religious symbols as well as the art and literature of the whole Western culture, and they remain perhaps the most fundamental and comprehensive images to describe the many-sided and multicolored workings of the human psyche. So that's certainly the truth. They talk about how many versions of major arcana are numbered, a practice that led to considerable disagreement among esotericists during the late 19th and early 20th century about which card should follow which. We have not numbered the major arcana in the Mythic Tarot deck. The Visconti Sforza deck had neither names nor numbers accompanying the images, and this may reflect the important psychological insight that the archetypal stages of the human journey portrayed so vividly in the symbolism of the cards are not identical for every individual, but represent characteristic human rites of passage, which may occur in a different order in any person's life. And so they have left off any numbers in the major arcana. they have, in the descriptions, we have delineated them in an order that reflects one characteristic version of the Fool's journey, but it is possible to see this journey in many different ways, and every individual's life is unique. So it goes on and talks about that. So it talks about that. It goes on talking about myth. What is mythology? I'll be really interested to sit down and read this particular one. And then it talks about the major arcana. We've got a graphic here of all of the cards laid out. And then it starts into a description. Now, I like already what I'm seeing in this guidebook here. So let's take a look at the Fool. So we have the name of the card, a description. The card of the Fool, the first of the major arcana, portrays a wild youth dressed in ragged animal skins of different colors, dancing in ecstatic abandonment at the edge of a precipice. He wears a wreath of vine leaves in his chestnut hair and bears little horns like those of a goat on his brow. His eyes are raised to the dawn breaking in the horizon, where the sun can just be seen above the horizon. Around him lies a formidable, barren landscape of brown and gray rocks. To his left, hidden in the shadows of the receding night, is the mouth of the cave from which he has emerged. Above it, on a bare branch, perches an eagle. So it goes in and really describes what we see. So it's a descriptor of the card. We then have an image of the card in black and white. And then it comes to some important things. So the eagle is the bird of Zeus, king of the gods, who watches over the Fool as he prepares to plunge into the unknown. The cave from which the Fool emerges is the past, the dark and undifferentiated mass from which the beginning of a true sense of individuality is about to take form. And the goat's horns on the Fool's brow, like the animal skin he wears, that he is like a young animal driven into life by instinct, not yet conscious or possessed of understanding. So I really like how it lets us know these very specific things that are going on in the card, in the artwork, that we want to pay attention to. And so then it explains, here we meet the hero of our journey in the guise of the mysterious god Dionysus, the twice-born. He was a child of great Zeus, king of the gods, and Semele, a mortal woman and a princess of Thebes. Zeus's wife Hera, furious at his infidelity, disguised herself as a nursemaid and whispered to Semele that she must test her lover's devotion by demanding that he appear before her in all his divine glory. Having promised Semele, or Semele, who could again probably slaughtering it, anything her heart might desire, the god was bound by his vow when she insisted that he reveal his divinity to her. Reluctantly, he manifested as thunder and lightning, and Semele was consumed in flames. But Zeus managed to rescue the unborn child. Hermes, messenger of the gods and patron of magic, sewed up the fetus in Zeus's thigh, thus Dionysus was born. It goes on to continue to talk about Hera continued to pursue the strange horned child and sent the Titans, the earth gods, to tear Dionysus to pieces. But Zeus rescued the child's heart, still beating. This heart he transformed into a portion of pomegranate seeds, and the magical drink was fed to the maiden Persephone by Hades, the dark god of the underworld, when he abducted her. Persephone became pregnant, and Dionysus was thus reborn into the underworld. Therefore, he was called Dionysus Iacchos, the twice-born god of light and ecstasy. Ordained by his father Zeus to live among men and share their suffering, he was stricken by madness by Hera, and wandered all over the world, followed by wild satyrs, mad women, and animals. He gave the gift of wine to mankind and brought drunken ecstasy and spiritual redemption to those who were willing to relinquish their attachment to worldly power and wealth. Eventually, his heavenly father Zeus bade him arise to Olympus, where he took his place at the right hand of the king of the gods. And so then it goes on and talks about the card on an inner level and then on a divinatory level. And so there we have quite a bit of information, a nice solid description of the myth behind who this represents, a description of who this would portray in terms of an inner sense, and then how you would use this in a divinatory way. So it talks about the fool augurs the event of new chapter in life, which he appears in a spread. A risk of some kind is required, a willingness to jump out into the unknown, that type of where we typically see the fool energy. So quite a good chunk of information there. And so again, we see the same thing, of course, with all of the major arcana. I love these here. The cup represents the cup of fortune, particularly fortune in love. For Hermes is wise in the knowledge of the heart. We have the catechus is Hermes' wand. Of magic entwined by two snakes, which represent all opposites, good and evil, male and female, dark and light. The sword represents the cutting edge of the power mind and its power given to Hermes by his father Zeus. The pentacles or coin marks Hermes as the god of sudden good luck and as the patron of merchants and businessmen. So that's, again, quite interesting because it really goes into some details there that is quite lovely. And then, of course, we have the myth, the inner level, and the divinatory level. So that's all the way through. Oh, look at, here's a centaur. Yes, I'm so excited about this. Okay, so then when we get, let's see if it's different for the suits. So then it goes into the minor arcana explaining the 4 suits. And we'll come to how they've changed that when we get to them. And then it goes into the suit of cups. We have this image where we can see the whole progression, which is quite lovely. And it talks about the numbered cards. And then it goes into the cups, or into the cards. So we again we don't have that kind of information along the sides. We have a description of the card. We have an explanation, and then we have a divinatory level. So a little bit less with the minor arcana, but that's pretty standard. We will look more closely at those when we get to the cards. What do we have here? Then we have a section on reading the cards, what tarot can and can't do. Now, the tarot cards cannot predict a fixed and fated future. You know, that's a little, I don't believe in a fixed and fated future, so I would agree with that. However, you know, people have different ways in which you might use things. And I think what it can and cannot do is probably up to the person who is in its hands. And that's just my own particular one. There are a series of images that describe the qualities of the moment when an individual consults them with a particular problem or situation. The Greeks call it kairos, or the right moment, which describes the idea that every moment in time possesses peculiar and unique characteristics and qualities. We must dispense with our typical 20th century Western view of time in order to understand that the tarot cards really do, what the tarot cards really do, and look instead towards ancient philosophy and the beliefs of the East, where time is seen not in terms of quantity, a moment is a measurement, 1/60th of an hour, for example, but in terms of quality. A moment is a living thing possessing its own identity and meaning. And goes on to talk about the way that they see time and how you can use it. It says the past, present, and future that are implied in a particular tarot card reading tend to express a period of around 6 months. Thus, the moment which we have been considering is a period of time, including the past and the choices, the motives, present, the future, which is natural outgrowth, but not so much a concrete way, which again, I personally agree with. I think it's just a little bit difficult to say what something can or cannot do because it's a tool and it depends on what somebody is going to use that tool as. And I have a very large bug climbing on my quartz, so one moment. I hope you all took note of how calmly I said that there was a very large bug crawling on my quartz. Because I could have screamed, but I didn't. We have these, I don't know what their real names are. We have these big bugs called stink bugs. You can't squish them. It's probably not good for karma, but B, they smell terrible if you do. So, or so I've heard. I don't think I've always heard that, so I've certainly never squished one. So, where were we? I was just saying that I think that for me, tarot is a tool, and so how somebody can or cannot use them probably depends on them, their own self, and how they view the world. But talk about making a relationship, laying out a spread, and then we get to the spreads where we have reading the Celtic Cross and an example reading, 2 example readings. Here we have the planetary spread. I quite like this. So this has the moon, Mercury. We then have Venus. We have the sun. We have Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Example reading. And then a conclusion. And then it has notes on your readings where you could, make notes of readings that you've done. And further reading on, it looks like tarot in general, some Greek myth, so a mix of tarot as well as Greek mythology references there that you can use. So this one I'm quite, obviously the Celtic Cross I used for years. I know how to use that. For a book this big, you'd think maybe there'd be a couple more spreads that are to do with the Greek mythology, but I do quite like this. At least there's a planetary spread, so we will definitely give that a try at the end. So there we have it. I quite like how they show, where you can just, again, see the whole range that's going on here. And we'll talk about the minors and what stories they're following as we get to it. But quite a meaty book, and one that I will be reading through because I've heard it's really fantastic. So there's that. So let's, of course, get to the cards themselves. Now, in watching Stephen's comparison, most of the cards I liked better in the first edition. A couple of them I liked in the second edition, but again, you work with what you have. I wanted to check the system out, and that wasn't possible with the first edition, so we'll go ahead and try it with the second edition. So, of course, we already talked about the Fool, despite the fact that we can talk all about Dionysus, and we can, I love the cave. I really actually quite like that imagery of coming from a cave. You have a lot more of sort of emerging from the womb, emerging this really brand new life. Because I always thought, well, the Fool is supposed to be on a new journey, but clearly he's gotten up to the top of the mountain, so he's had a whole new journey before he ever got here. Now we're on another new journey. So I quite like how they explain that with Dionysus. I think that works really well. He does look a little bit happy-go-lucky, a little fool energy there. And we do have the sun coming up here, but taking all that away, this certainly reads very much visually as a traditional Fool card. So then we have the Magician here, who is, again, I really liked the scriptures because it really talks about a wiry, slender young man with curling black hair facing us at a crossroads. See how he's standing in a crossroads? He's dressed for the road in a short white tunic. In his left hand, he points towards the heaven. With his right, he gestures to a flat rock which lies before him. At the convergence of roads on the rock are the 4 objects that we talked about. The barren landscape behind him, which is a continuation of the landscape seen in the Fool card, and then the 2 branches kind of disappearing off. So a lot of information there. So this is Hermes, guide of travelers, patron of thieves and liars, rulers of magic, divination, and bringers of sudden good luck and changes in fortune. He is called a trickster. So it goes on and again talks all about Hermes, talks about him as the inner, and then talks to him as divinatory, about potential skills and creative abilities that are within us. So again, we still see traditional magician, as above, so below, the 4 elements being represented. I really like the addition of the crossroads. Like, I love the cave here. I love the crossroads imagery there. I think that's something that's really would lend itself towards reading. Next, we have the Empress card, which is quite lovely. Now, I think you can see... Nope, that's the same Empress. I thought it had the old images on here. I quite like the Empress in the original. Again, they look very similar. It's just a different style of art, and there's something really sweet about the original one. So here we have a beautiful earthy woman, it says, with rich flowing brown hair, who is obviously pregnant, standing in a field of ripening barley. Her gown is woven of different plants and hemmed with leafy boughs. Don't really see the hem with a leafy bough, but that's great. It talks about a diadem of castles on her head. This is Demeter, I'm sorry. So this is Persephone's mother. She is the Earth Mother, ruler of all nature and protectress of young, defenseless creatures. In Greek myth, Demeter ripened the golden grain each year, and in late summer, the people offered thanks to her for the bounty of the earth. Again, talks about the inner level, and the other inner level of the Great Mother. And then it does talk about her having a dark side, which is wonderful. And then on the divinatory, it talks about her as that more earthy phase, creative energy, and that type of thing. So it goes through with that. But I think that she's quite lovely, and I quite like her. But you can see the orders changed a little bit because we went from the Fool to the Magician. But there's nothing saying you have to keep this order because there's no numbers, right? So we went from the Fool to the Magician, and now we have the Emperor and the Empress. And the Emperor, I like the, you lose some of the detail, I think, in the second edition compared to, because his red or purple robes get a little bit, you know, like blobby compared to the first one. But again, we were working with what we can get a hold of. So of course this would be Zeus, and we can see he has the lightning bolt in his hand. It talks about the symbol of his power. It talks about him having his abode in the mountain peaks because he is a god of mental and spiritual heights, and he will rise above the bondage of the body. It talks about the eagle being his emblem because of keen sight and the power. I do really like with the majors how it talks about the specific things in the card. His hair, the color of his hair, his eyes being sky blue, the purple of his robes, the crown on his head, the 3 lightning bolts. Like, it goes into all a descriptor of exactly what we're seeing and what those could be relating to. So I think that that is really, really wonderful there. And I really, I like this one a lot. I like that one. I don't know why I'm lifting it up because I am zoomed in. That's gorgeous. I'm assuming that that's Persephone. I'm assuming, yes, Persephone. The pomegranate is the fruit of the dead and of conjugal love. The black and white pillars reflect the duality contained in the underworld, creative potentials and destructive impulses. The narcissus, which Persephone picked when Hades abducted her, was associated with the dead because of its ghostly color. Yes. Yeah, I'm really going to like reading the inner level. Let's just look at that with the High Priestess, just so we can see. So, again, it talks about all the images that we're seeing. It makes great, you know, the pillars make good sense with Persephone as well. And so it talks, of course, about her, which I've talked a lot about Persephone. She's one of my favorite mythological peoples here. And so in the end, she becomes the guardian both of the underworld, but also when she comes to up to the land of the living during the 6 months of the year as well. So there's 2 sections for each of the major arcana. One says the inner level. So let's just read that for Persephone. Persephone, the High Priestess, is an image of the link with the mysterious inner world to which depth psychology has given the name the unconscious. It is as though beneath and beyond the ordinary daylight world, which we believe to be reality, lies another hidden world full of riches and potentials which we cannot penetrate without the consent of its invisible rulers. This world contains our undeveloped potentials as well as the darker, more primitive facets of the personality. It also holds the secret of destiny of the individual, which gestates in darkness until the time is ripe for manifestation. Persephone, the high priestess, is an embodiment of that part of us which knows the secret of the inner world, but she can only be dimly sensed by waking consciousness and appears through the fleeting fragments of dreams or through those strange coincidences which make us begin to wonder whether there might be some hidden pattern at work in our lives. Persephone is a seductive and fascinating figure, but she does not speak of her secrets. In the same way, the night world of the unconscious glimpsed through dreams and fantasies and intuitions is also seductive and fascinating. But when we try to grasp it with the intellect and master it for our own purposes, it remains mute and slides away. The dark world of Persephone provides only shadowy glimpses of patterns and movements at work within the individual, which require patience and the passage of time before they can be brought into the light of day. The myth of Persephone emphasizes the cyclical motion of time, portraying a mysterious rhythm, a constant coming and going of something. The seeds of change and new potentials wait silently in the womb of the underworld before they are given over to the care of the Earth Mother, Demeter, which we saw here, and brought to birth in the material world. Persephone, the high priestess, is an image of that natural law at work within the depths of the soul, which governs the unfolding of destiny from an invisible source, and which is revealed only through feeling, intuition, and the night world of dreams. So here we have that sense between the two of them as those two different facets. So really lovely. I'm really excited to read this full guidebook. Here we have the Hierophant, which we have a centaur. So this is Chiron, king of the centaurs. He is also considered the wounded healer. He is a healer, priest, and wise teacher of all young heroes in myth. Of course, I know I have to speed it up, but Chiron the Hierophant is an image of that part of us that reaches upwards towards the spirit in order to understand what is required of us by God. He is the inner spiritual teacher, the priest who establishes a link through ordinary worldly consciousness and intuitive knowledge of God's law. That is really neat. Actively seeking answers of a philosophical kind is sort of the divinatory meaning. Here we have the Lovers, which goes back to more traditional Lovers card, in which we have, this has Paris. I think that some of the older Marseille decks have Hercules, but this is a Paris who is commanded by Zeus to judge a beauty contest between three goddesses, Hera, Aphrodite, and Athena. When Paris was born, an oracle declared that one day he would be downfall of his father's kingdom. And so it goes into the whole story of that. He ended up choosing Aphrodite, being young and not clear about his own values. His reward was the famous Helen, Queen of Sparta, and inconveniently someone else's wife. But we do have the idea of choice here, right? That you see, and often in the older ones, you'll see Hercules having to choose between two women. So this really does kind of bring that concretely, that understanding of choice into the Lovers card. I quite like this Chariot. In fact, I think I liked the Chariot card perhaps in this one better than the first one. I can't remember because I think that this is just looks so energetic, right? We've got those horses just one way, another way, just they look full of energy here. Now, usually the rider looks a lot more like it doesn't matter how crazy stuff going on here. The rider's just standing there all tall and confident. He's definitely hanging on to the reins, right? But it still, to me, works as the energy of the Chariot. So this is Ares, A-R-E-S, who is a war god conceived by Hera. And here's what goes in and talks about him. But just as a Chariot, I think that this works beautifully. And that's the thing that I wanted to continue to highlight, is even though I think this is, this is very firmly, has specific deities behind these, just in terms of visually, you can see, you can read these without even knowing those mythologies, which is nice. It still reflects the sort of core meanings of the cards. And so I quite like that aspect of it. Beautiful Justice card. I mean, it's a little stiff looking, but that's okay. So this is Athena, which I think is wonderful because she is the goddess of justice. And it's beautifully done in terms of, I love the owl here, along with the traditional sword and scales. So I think that this is quite gorgeous. Here we have Temperance. And so this, again, I really like the addition of these sort of little things that give us more detail. So it talks about the rainbow symbolizing promise and the renewal of a relationship. It's a bridge between heaven and earth. It talks about the polarity of water and earth, which she stands, and her capacity to unite opposites within the individual. It talks about the gold and silver cups, reflecting the sun and the moon, the masculine and the feminine, the conscious, the unconscious, and so on and so forth. So I really like that aspect. This is Iris, who is the goddess of the rainbow and messenger to Hera, queen of the gods. She is the feminine counterpart for Hermes, which we have in actually the Magician, I believe. Yeah, in the Magician. So that's quite lovely. The need for flow of feeling in relationship, potential for harmony and cooperation. So that's quite lovely. I like the irises down there as well. Here we have the Strength card. Now, in this one, I definitely like the first version Strength card because the first version, while we still have a man kind of wrestling a lion, the lion looks pretty laid back in that one. Kind of like, you know, we've got this covered, right? This is Hercules. It definitely, this is more along the line. So Hercules is battling the Nemean lion, and it talks about this being an image of the problem of containing the powerful and savage beasts within us while still preserving those animal qualities which are creative and vital. So it still reflects the idea that we want to be able to tap into those energies, but we need to be able to contain them. Divinatory wise, it talks about a situation where a collision with the lion within is inevitable and where a creative handling of one's own rage and senseless pride is desirable. Courage, strength, and self-discipline are necessary to battle with the situation. So definitely a more Marseille viewing of Strength, a little bit more like the Fortitude card. The first edition, while again still having it, is quite a lot easier for me to reconcile my version or my understanding of the Strength card. But in context of this deck and the cycles, I can certainly work with that. I just prefer the first edition's version of that. I quite like the Hermit card here. I love the lamp that Kronos carries is the lamp of insight and understanding, gleaned from the loneliness and patient waiting which the card of the Hermit implies. I love that. I love the crow here. The crow is Kronos' bird because it was believed to be the embodiment of the spirit of the old king who had died to make way for the new cycle. And the scythe, also, the crescent of the moon was given to Cronus by his mother Gaia. It symbolizes the eternal fluctuations and cycles of time. So I love the details going on here and what's in this card. So this is the god Kronos, whose name means time. And so this is just wonderful. The Kronos the Hermit is an image of the last of the four moral lessons which the fool must learn. The lesson of time and the limitations of mortal life. It indicates a withdrawal, so that wisdom and patience may be acquired. This is really a lovely card, and I love the Wheel of Fortune. The thread which the moire spin, measured and cut, is likened to the weaving of the tissues of the body which takes place in the womb, thus suggesting that fate is bound up with the heredity and with the body itself. The cave suggests both the womb from which life springs and the tomb to which it returns. The 3 ages of the moire reflect the lunar phases, the young crescent, full, and finally dark, the 3 stages of every human life. Love, 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 love. Quite love that. Sudden change of fortune is, you know, just a divinatory. The divinatory meanings seem to be quite standard. I love that. Here we have the Hanged Man. I think this is actually quite a powerful Hanged Man. I'm not sure what magic is keeping his skirt upwards when he's hanging upside down. And he definitely is in a difficult, this is the sun is out, he's hanging on the outside of the, of a cliff, so this is quite a difficult Hanged Man. The setting sun suggests the waning of the bright light of consciousness and will. The liver, which in the myth was attacked by Zeus's ego, was associated with spirit and hope. Prometheus' posture implies that the head, the rational mind, is no longer controls. Like the setting sun, this image symbolizes the descent of the spirit into the darkness of the unconscious. Really powerful Hanged Man. So this is Prometheus, the titan who defied the law of Zeus and stole the fire of the gods to give to man, knowing full well that he would suffer for his deed. So he sacrificed himself for that. So I really think that's one of my favorite Hanged Mans, actually, because it does imply that sacrifice, and a difficult sacrifice at that, and a knowledge of sacrifice in order to gain something. So I really like that. Here we have Death, which is a little strange in the perspective area, but this is Hades. And just because we have these little teeny people here, the river Styx, which means hated, was envisaged as a leaden and forbidding river, which we have that kind of going. Here we have the light of the, greenery of life, and then the barrenness here. It talks about his hands being open to receive the gifts offered by the tiny humans. One gives him a golden crown, another a pile of coins, and the third, a child, gives him a flower. The permanent and final end of a cycle of life. So this definitely takes it as, death doesn't go to the transformative aspect that some modern decks go. It talks about it simply being that something needs to come to an end. But I do like the sunrise is still there. So there you can still move that. Yes, the cycle has come to an end, but what's coming up tomorrow? A new cycle is also beginning. Here we have the Devil, which I think is fantastic. We have a satire here, which would be the great god Pan. He was worshipped as the great All. Hermes fathered Pan with a nymph Dryop. It goes on and talks about this. Pan the Devil is an image of bondage to the crudest and most instinctual aspect of human nature. So in divinatory, it says it implies the necessity of a confrontation with all that is shadowy, shameful, and base in the personality. The fool must free himself by gaining knowledge and honest, humble acceptance of Pan, for then can he release the creative power that is held in chains by his own panic and self-disgust. I do prefer my, the people in a traditional devil card to have, pretty look like they can easily get out of the situation. But I also, so that doesn't really show itself here, but I do quite like that we see this sort of panic nature, and I think that's not the way to sort of deal with this energy. We've got to stop and take a breath and work our way out of the situation that we've gotten ourselves into. So still a very powerful devil card. So here we have the Tower. Of course, we have Poseidon here, who is the earth shaker, right? He is known obviously as the god of the sea, but he shakes the earth as well. And so here it says we see the famous labyrinth of King Minos, which was struck by an earthquake when the angry god Poseidon rose up from the waters to topple the kingdom. So it is the collapse. It says inwardly, the God-struck tower is an image of the collapse of old forms. A breakdown of existing forms. This card, like the cards of death and the devil, depends a great deal upon the attitude of the individual in terms of how difficult or painful it is to deal with. I think that's quite interesting as well. Like that. I really like the first edition version of the star card more. I mean, I quite like the imagery, but the actual artwork of the first one I like better. So here, of course, we have Pandora. She is like Eve, a woman. It is the feminine side of human nature, feeling, instinct, imagination, intuition. The chest that Zeus sends to mankind with Pandora is like the apple in the Garden of Eden, something that is forbidden yet impossible to resist. Yet it also contains the most precious attribute of the human spirit. The insects, unlike the warmer-blooded creatures, are far from human consciousness and relationships. We cannot communicate with them, but are stung and goaded by nature itself. It says on an inner level, the image of Pandora and the Star of Hope is a symbol of that part of us which, despite disappointment, depression, and loss, can still cling to a sense of meaning and a future which might grow out of the unhappiness of the past. I really like this inner level section in the guidebook, and I definitely intend to do some work with that, because it really talks here a lot about the quality of hope. Has nothing to do with planned expectations. It talks about some difficulties in Germany and Poland and Hungary, and continues to go on and talk in a really powerful way about the star. So I'm really interested in reading this guidebook thoroughly. It talks about this, when this shows up, being an experience of hope, meaning, and faith in the midst of difficulties. So that's quite beautiful. So here we, of course, have Hecate for the moon. That's not surprising. I think I like the artwork of the first one better, but this still reflects Hecate, I think, well. She is the ruler of the moon, magic, and enchantment. She can sometimes be interchangeable, it says, with Artemis, the moon goddess. But I think Hecate is certainly a wonderful talks about the three faces of Hecate, like the three faces of the Moirai, reflect inevitable changes. The crab is the creature which belongs wholly to neither the water nor the earth realm, but makes its abode in between. It's the image of the dream world, which arises from the unknown depths. It talks about white and silver. The colors of Hecate's robes and hair are associated with the moon because they believed to contain all colors within them. So it goes on again to talk about this in a wonderful way. It does talk about being a period of confusion, fluctuation, and uncertainty. You're seeing things in half light, but there's a lot you could do with this particular card. Really lovely. Here we have the sun, which again, I like that it's a powerful male. I think there was something about the first one that I liked more. I think it had to do with the perspective. But I still think that this works. We have that idea of Apollo, that sort of that beautiful energy here. Clarity, optimism, and renewed trust. But it's that sense of being very strong and very powerful. And I think it works quite well. So yes. Here we have the Judgment card, and so this is the end of the cycle, and here we have Hermes, the guide to the soul. In the card of the Magician, Hermes appears as the fool's inner guide at the beginning of the journey of life. Now he is revealed as a powerful underworld deity, emissary of Hades, who summons the dying gently and eloquently by laying his golden staff upon their eyes. So that's quite interesting because it's a different version, and it shows, that kind of beginning of the Magician how he's reflecting and working with the Fool card at the beginning of the cycle, right? And then when we come to the end, how he's working with the Fool in a different way because obviously the Fool has worked through all these different stages to get to this point. So I quite like that. We then, of course, have the World card. They really do show, you normally see that sort of hermaphroditic type character in the World card. They literally have, you know, like a two-headed, and so this is Hermaphroditus, who in myth was the child of Hermes and Aphrodite. In one version of the tale, Hermaphroditus was born a double-sexed being, but in another, this duality or unity was made rather than born. So it just depends on the myths. But this is the idea of experience of being whole. It says male and female are more than sexual identifications limited to the genital organs. They are great polarities which encompass all the opposites in life. The double-sexed being born in one version of the myth and made in another is a symbol of the potential integration of the opposites within the personality. And so we do again have that integration. Again, this is a symbol that we see in many world cards, although it's not always as obvious of what we're looking at as we see here with the two heads. And then, of course, we have the images of the suits surrounding it. So that is the end of the major arcana. I quite like that. Yes, there are some of the artwork that I prefer in the first edition, but I don't have access to that. So I really think that this is actually better than I thought it would be. It's not going to win me over. Like, I wouldn't buy this because of the artwork, but nothing really says, oh no, I can't even look at that. So I mean, maybe perhaps because most of those negative comments I've seen have been by people who have had the first edition, so it was quite disappointing to be able to not get that. So that I understand, but having not had that, I could certainly work with this. So let's take a breath and come back. I'm not going to show the aces individually because I don't think that it necessarily will work here, because these are actually following certain stories, not really trying to see the aces as a unified going together. So let's regroup with the suits.